A Place to Grow, written by Stephanie Bloom and illustrated by Kelly Murphy. The tiny seed floated down from the sky and landed on the earth without a sound. Could this be my place to grow? The tiny seed wondered. I hope so, for as long as I can remember, I have been searching for a home. Where had it landed this time? It was shady and cool. The ground was buckled and cracked, like something was pushing from deep inside. Whoa! Exclaimed the tiny seed. It had landed at the foot of an enormous tree. This looks like the perfect place for me to put down roots, the tiny seed declared. Looks can be deceiving, replied a tree in a voice so deep it made the ground hum. This forest is no place for a little seed to grow. My roots are so tangled and thirsty that you would never get enough soil or water. And my branches are so broad that they would steal all your sunlight. You could never grow here. I will never grow anywhere, sighed the tiny seed. Yes, you will, chuckled the big tree, because that's what seeds do. We grow. It happens to all of us. One day you will find the place that's right for you. It will have everything you need to take root. Until then, enjoy your journey, my little friend. Oh, wind, called the tiny seed. Please come and get me. This is not my place to grow. So the wind blew in and carried the tiny seed far, far away. The tiny seed floated down from the sky and landed on the earth without a sound. Could this be my place to grow? The tiny seed wondered. Where had it landed this time? A buzzing bee danced from flower to flower. It landed and then darted back in surprise. Butterflies. Oof! The tiny seed was moving. A giant ant had snatched it up and was racing towards a big pile of sand. Stop! Put me down! Yelled the tiny seed. Oh my, wheezed the ant with a surprise. I thought you were a pebble. I was going to use you on the top of the anthill. You would make a dandy front door. I'm not a pebble, said the tiny seed with a huff. I'm a seed waiting to grow. Can't you see that? This park is a busy, busy place, and I'm a busy, busy ant. I don't have time to notice everything, snapped the ant and raced off to finish building its home. I wish I could build a home like the ant, thought the tiny seed. But a seed needs roots, not sand and pebbles. Oh, wind, called the tiny seed. This is not my place to grow. Please come and get me. So the wind blew in and carried the tiny seed far, far away. The tiny seed floated down from the sky and landed on the earth without a sound. Could this be my place to grow? The tiny seed wondered. Where had it landed this time? Silky tufts of clover blanketed the fresh green pasture. Chomp, chomp, chomp. The tiny seed looked up and gasped. A cow's huge wet tongue was heading straight toward it. "Watch where you're eating," hollered the tiny seed. "You almost made me your lunch." Chomp, chomp, chomp. "Hey, cow!" shouted the tiny seed. "Did you hear me?" The hungry cow didn't hear a thing and kept on chewing. Chomp, 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 gulp, burp. The hungry cow licked its lips and leaned down to take another bite. Just as the tiny seed was about to be eaten, the wind blew in and carried it far, far away. The tiny seed floated down from the sky and landed on the earth without a sound. Could this be my place to grow? The tiny seed wondered. Where had it landed this time? A weathered wooden fence guarded rows and rows of ripe vegetables. Do you think he's finally found his home? Let's keep reading and find out. "Scram!" barked a red tomato. "Every spot's taken," screeched a yellow pepper. "What about over there?" asked the tiny seed and pointed to an empty patch of soil. "I promised I would grow so quietly and you would never know I was there." "Well," boomed a plump purple eggplant, "that row is for the rutabagas. Are you a rutabaga?" "I don't know," replied the tiny seed. "I don't even know if I'm a vegetable." "We knew what kind of seeds we were right from the start," squeaked a green zucchini. "A gardener brought us home from the greenhouse in packets with our names on them." "Then I'm definitely not a vegetable," said the tiny seed sadly. "I didn't come from a packet. I floated down from the sky, and I'm not planted by a gardener. I have to plant myself." "In that case," boomed the eggplant, "you can't grow in our garden. We're sorry, but you just don't belong here." "This is not my place to grow," said the tiny seed very softly. And without having to be asked, the wind blew in and carried the tiny seed far, far away. The tiny seed cried as the wind gently cradled it in its swirling current. "You must never lose hope," whispered the wind. "But I have searched and searched," the tiny seed sobbed, "and there is no place for me to go. I will never find a home." "For as long as time," whispered the wind, "I have carried all kinds of seeds across the earth, and one by one, each seed found its own special place to grow." "But I'm not like other seeds," said the tiny seed with a sniffle. "I'm a floater, not a grower." "You are a grower," whispered the wind, "because that's what seeds do. They grow." "You sound just like the old tree," said the tiny seed. "That old tree was once a tiny seed and rode with me just like you," whispered the wind. "Now it's time for you to float down to the ground and look again." "No, wind, I want to stay here with you. Please don't let me go," cried the tiny seed. "Don't be afraid. You will find your place to grow and bloom. And I will be there. I will always be there," whispered the wind, and gently released the tiny seed from its airy embrace. The tiny seed floated down from the sky and landed on the earth without a sound. Could this be my place to grow? The tiny seed wondered. Where had it landed this time? Giant hills rolled up to the clouds, filling the valley below with a peaceful calm. Exhausted from all of its adventures, the tiny seed yawned and fell asleep. Choo, choo, choo! A puffing steam engine roared by and spun the tiny seed high into the air. One minute I was dreaming of growing, and now I can't tell up from down, shouted the tiny seed. This is definitely not my place to grow. Wind, please come and get me. So the wind blew in and carried the tiny seed far, far away. The tiny seed floated down from the sky and landed on the earth without a sound. I'm sure this is not my place to grow, thought the tiny seed. It never is. Where had it landed this time? Blades of tall, shiny grass swayed as if saying hello. A lively band of crickets sang a friendly song of welcome. Soon, I will discover the reason why this place can't be my home. Then I will be floating through the sky again. So the tiny seed waited and waited and waited and waited. While the tiny seed waited in the grassy meadow, the sun peeked out from behind a cloud. Ah, the sunlight is so warm here, said the tiny seed as it was bathing in the golden glow. Later, a light rain showered down. The water is so sweet here, said the tiny seed as it drank and drank and drank. Soon the rain stopped. The soil is so soft here, said the tiny seed as it snuggled deeply into the moist earth. Then the tiny seed felt the wind blow into the meadow, and although it loved the wind, the tiny seed was filled with a deep sadness at having to leave this place and float again. The wind blew and blew and blew. But a strange thing happened. The tiny seed didn't float up into the sky, and the wind didn't carry it far, far away. The tiny seed couldn't move. It was held firmly in place by a root that was as strong as it was tiny. The tiny seed was growing at last. "Oh, wind!" shouted the tiny seed with joy. "I have finally found my place to grow. I belong here in the grassy meadow." "You are home," the wind whispered back. "Enjoy your new journey." And there in the grassy meadow, the tiny seed grew. And grew and grew and grew. The beginning.